Okay, so I think everyone has wondered, man, if I shot a giant deer, what happens after it? Now you've been able to experience this over the last few months. So you killed the deer,
Yeah.
and obviously it catches wind and everything else, and then you have the drying period. Like
Hmm.
tell me tell me whether like would you describe it as an emotional roller coaster? Was it all up? Was it all just kind of what you expected?
Well, expected? No, not at all. Well, I mean, some of it, yeah. Immediately, you know, North American whitetail. Hey, we want to do an article. I'm like, all right, okay. What do you want? Yeah, what? Okay, cool. I've read North American whitetail my whole life. This would be awesome. And they're like, well, what is score? Well, what did they say about this point? What about this point or this top? And I'm like, "Ugh, I don't know. I got to wait 60 days and then they're going to panel score it. And then after they panel scored it, Boone and Crockett says, nope, you did it wrong. So, North American Whitetail, they wanted, they reached out to me, had, hey, we want to do an article, but I don't, there's no article at the moment, because they're all worried about Boone and Crockett scoring and whatnot. But, you know, I had, you know, I had a lot of people reaching out to me and podcasts, magazines, news, online, people doing online articles.
Hmm.
Um, and as soon as you pick up the phone, hey man, this is so and so, I write for whatever, you know, awesome deer, let's hear about it. And they want you to start telling them the story. As soon as you tell them the story, they can write about it.
Hmm.
And as soon as I'm like, well, hold on a second, what's and I hate to say this, but what are you gonna, where are you gonna publish it? Well, we're not sure yet. We might do something online, or we whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, North American Whitetail offered me this. What are you guys offering? And they're like, well, we don't really do that. And I hate to say this, but you know, everybody wants to write a quick article for free. Um,
I've done it. I did it in
and
college. I was that guy.
and and it's fine. I mean, and I did. I've done, I do stuff. I've done stuff. I went out to the ATA trade show and set my deer up at a booth, and I did it for this zero. Took time off work, went out there. They were great people. They were very nice to me. And I said, you know what? These people are very nice. They contacted me, and I'm like, you know what? I'll go to the ATA show. It's going to be a fun experience. But they were decent. They treated me well. They weren't just, hey, tell me the story so I can write an article. Um, but what's funny is, as soon as the CJ Alexander buck was killed, everything went silent
I
for
was gonna
me.
ask. Yeah, I almost kind of wanted to ask that because that obviously happened what a
Yeah.
week or two after you shot your buck,
Yeah,
and
and North American Whitetail immediately was like, "Oh yeah, we're writing an article, releasing it today for the CJ Alexander buck." And I'm like, "Well, what about me? You guys, you've been talking to me for weeks, and now all of a sudden you're just going to drop me and, hey, well, we'll get to you in a minute." And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
uh
And I'm like, "Well, what about his common base?" Well, so and so said it will be fine, so we're just going to go with it. And then about 3, 4 weeks later, they're writing another article saying, hey, we might have jumped the gun a little bit. And I don't know the detail. I do know a lot of the details, but because it happened here in my state, and some of the people that scored my deer have actually held his deer. And, I'm not going to comment on it. I don't, that's going to be whatever. But that had a negative impact on mine. And I'm happy, if it all works out for him, great. You know what? I mean, that deer is
it's a
huge.
yes.
Um, It's huge. There's no question about it. The deer's huge. It's bigger than mine. I'm not gonna tell you it's not. I'm not gonna lie. So but that had an impact on it. But the whole after you kill a deer, whatever. I mean, I did a couple articles with Meat Eater. A
Mhm.
lot of people have reached out to me. I've talked to a lot of people. Um, you don't get rich. I mean, that's what people think. Like, oh,
Wait, you
you
don't have
can.
$1 million direct deposited into your account?
No, no, I'm still going to work every day. Uh, yeah. Um, no, I mean, it's just, you get a lot of, you get a lot of publicity. I've done a couple other podcasts. I've done a
Mhm.
YouTube video with Creek Kings. You know, just really just getting your name out there. And yeah, some people, the seed company, I killed the deer, I use their stuff, Merit Seeds. I've gone to a show with them and set up, and they'll give you some food plot stuff. It's not like, you know, I didn't kill the huff buck. The huff buck is big, as
Yeah,
far, because that's a Boone and Crockett 212-inch deer.
it's huge.
And that's what everybody cares about. They don't care about his deer was 189 inches and my deer was 187 inches. Buckmasters, they don't care that they're only 2 inches apart. They care about Boone and Crockett,
Yeah,
which is fine. Some people care about Boone and Crockett. Some people care about Buckmasters. So it is what it
which
is.
yeah, that's right or wrong, but Boone and Crockett has been the benchmark for
Yeah,
whitetails. And then I
yeah.
think this is me looking at it objectively is I feel as they scrutinize more and more of these incredible, incredible, amazing whitetails, I
Hmm.
think the general public is kind of looking at Boone and Crockett with a raised eyebrow and saying, "Wait a minute, wait, what? That's a 200 plus inch typical, and it nets 139 in your book or 137 in your book. Something doesn't seem
138.
138 in your
138
book."
doesn't
And
even
I
make it. Doesn't. I mean, it doesn't make any book.
and that's the crazy thing. So
Uh,
I honestly think, and I've been saying this for a while. It's like I feel like Boone and Crockett kind of has they're like their days are numbered. Whether and it really doesn't matter. It does matter in some sense, as you're mentioning, because it's kind of the benchmark. But
mhm.
I almost wonder that will there be a changing of guard to where people will stop caring about Boone and Crockett and now it's Buckmasters, and it's because their scoring system makes more sense.
I think a lot of the younger people, yes. The younger hunters, yes. And I think I think I would say 40 and under ish, maybe. I might be off a little bit. Um, but as that age group gets old, as that generation of hunter gets older, and the old school hunters that hunted through the 90s and early 2000s and 80s, as they get older, I think I think Boone and Crockett's going to be less and less and less, and the total inches of antler is going to be more, whether it's Safari Club International or whether it's Buckmasters.
Hmm.
People forget Safari Club International scores their deer the exact same as Buckmasters. It's not a new scoring system.
Hmm.
Well, I should say Safari Club counts the spread.
Okay.
Buckmasters does not.
Okay.
So,
I feel like
you
Buckmasters is like is more popular than Ohio. I live in Illinois, and
mhm,
no one talks about Buckmaster scores. But then in Ohio, just seeing on Facebook, it seems like the Ohio crew really likes the Buckmaster scoring.
they do. I mean, the guy that scored my deer, I think he's done like 2,000 deer. I mean, the day he did mine, he wasn't even going to do my deer. I said, I'm like, hey, I really need to get this thing scored. I said, he's like, well, has anyone put a tape? I said, yeah, Buckmaster or Ohio Big Buck score taped it at 211 4/8. And I sent him a picture and he's like, can you be here at 1 today? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there at 1. He's like, he goes, we'll see what the tape says. He's like, but you might be looking at all time. He goes, you might be looking at the new number one in the world for Buckmasters Perfect. And I'm like, well, who's number one? He said, Dustin Huff. I'm like, no way. So then we go and measure it, and it's a couple inches away, which is, I
Wow.
mean, it's this much.
Yeah.
It's not, which I mean, Dustin and I've met, we've had our deer. I met him, and we put our deer side by side, took some pictures. And Dustin's a great guy. He's
Yeah.
actually helped. He's kind of mentored me through, like, hey, here's what I did. I did a lot of this stuff. Do this, this, this.
Hmm.
You know, try and stay away from this. And or yeah, that guy. I know him. He's a great guy. Or that's a great. Those are great people. He's
Hmm.
helped me along the way, and he's a super super good guy. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. Which I talked to Dustin briefly once in person, and that's the same impression I have, and I think that's it's definitely very cool, and it's
yeah,
you're an elite club of so many people that have had these occurrences happen, and it is crazy, and that the deer you shot is truly insane. I mean, it's just if someone took
you
a pen and paper and drew their dream whitetail, that's
you
probably
know
what it's
what's
going to be.
I got to ask my wife. She moved it, and I don't know where it's at.
Uh-oh.
That's bad.
That's real
I don't
bad.
know I don't know where my deer's at. I was gonna pick it up and show it to you, but yeah, I don't know where it's
Yeah.
at. But yeah, we're doing some replicas and a life size mount.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be at
Really.
the I'm gonna be down with it at the oh, what's it? The show in Columbus was the ATA show or
The Ohio Deer Classic?
the Ohio, or it was the Ohio it was the Ohio Deer and Turkey Expo. What is it now?
Yeah.
Is that the deer
Um,
class now or
yeah,
something
well, that's what I
something
would call it,
outdoor
yeah.
show or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So we'll be down there.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed the article Mark Kenyon did about the scoring and talking
mhm.
about that. I think he's
Yeah,
the perfect person
yep.
to eloquently explain what we're all thinking in the back of our mind.
And I couldn't believe it when I'm like sitting at work and my email pops up and says Mark Kenyon. I'm like, clicked on it, it said meat eater. I'm like, I've listened to this guy's podcast for 8 years,
Forever. Yeah.
9 years now. I mean, since 2015 when him and
Dan
uh,
Johnson.
Dan Johnson, yeah, Nine Finger Chronicles, was on. And I listened to, I used to drive a lot for work, and I would listen to every single one of their podcasts.
Mhm.
And then it's like, the dude, all right, then he's like, hey, give me a call. Here's my number. And I'm like, is this Mark Kenyon? And he's like, yeah, it's Mark Kenyon, which was pretty cool. So,
Yeah. What's been the
yeah.
most what's been the most surprising thing since you've shot this deer that has shocked you? Maybe outside of North American whitetail.
Um, well, don't get me wrong. I've still been in contact with North American Whitetail. They're still
Mhm.
going to, they're going to do an article on the deer. Um, they've kind of, I don't know. With this whole CJ Alexander thing, I think people are really like, okay, let's see what's going to happen with everything because they're trying to figure out what I think is if they're what they're waiting on is they're saying, okay, if CJ Alexander's if he comes back and he's innocent, they're going to be beating down his door to write an
To me,
article.
the biggest story ever.
Yeah, they're going to be, and I'm not, and I think that's what these people are waiting on. They're sitting back waiting. Like we're not gonna, we're, you know, they're still doing breaking buck things online or whatever.
Mhm.
They don't publish anything until like June or July. They don't write anything. They're in trade show season now, so they're not writing anything. So it's fine. I'm not like I don't want to talk down to them. I'm honored that they reached out to me, and I
Yeah.
want them to run the first article on the deer and publish it because I grew up reading North American Whitetail as a kid. Um, but the thing that just is mind blowing to me that's just, and I'm starting to, it is what it is. I've kind of just wrote it off. Is the scoring system. I've had. It's just crazy. I've had, when I had it at the ATA show, I'm going around and I'm running into Stale Kraka, the guy he's got his own crawfish business or whatever. The Cajun Tuesday, I'm running into him, Michael Waddell, Nick Mont, everybody in the outdoor industry is down there. Lee and Tiffany did not make the show, but I was really hoping because I put mine up next to like Lee's biggest deer that were at Analogics, and I'm like, hey, my deer's bigger than Lee Lakoski's, which was kind of pretty cool. But um, there's Boone and Crockett scores down there, and they're like, oh, I bet that deer scored this, or I bet that deer scored this, and I'm like, well, Boone and Crockett has it at 138, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this point right here is an abnormal. And they're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, I'll show you the text message with the picture the guy sent me. Here it
Mhm.
is. He circled them. And the G3 on the right, the left side is abnormal too. Not the G4 that kicks out, the G3.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way. If I was going to say anything, it'd be this one. I'm like, well, that's not what they said. And I had numerous Boone and Crockett scores at the ATA show say that. I'm not. Well, I can't say it because he told me
Yeah.
not to.
Okay. Fair
But
enough.
I
I
had somebody that was very high up with one of the scoring systems was holding and looking at my deer, and he's like, "This is not right." He said that this was not right.
what
I'm
did you
on
ask him
whatever.
what the did you ask him, like, what is the course of action to have? Can it be rescored? Can it go up to a panel again?
Uh,
Or is it set in stone?
well, as far as Boone and Crockett's concerned, it would have to go to their biannual. They do like a biannual scoring thing where they bring in deer, and that need rescored or whatever. But I'm what am I going to do with my deer? Just hang on to the rack for 2 years
Uh-huh.
and then take it to them after 2.5 years of drying or whatever? I'm not sorry. I'm not interested. Um, but as far as Ohio big buck, I know that all the scores have to go to Mike Rex, who's the secretary or something. Yeah, and he has to go through and look at them, and then I guess like if the way I understand it, if he wanted to, he could say, "No, we need to take a look at that," and then they would bring it in and like potentially the only thing that they would do, Ohio Big Buck would do, because they will honor that, the typical score that they come up with. The only thing that they would do is like relook at that one broke busted point and then like really closely look at it and say, is it a little bit wider than what we said? Is it a little bit shorter? Did we make the right calls? I don't think they're going to do that. So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, but like I said, depending on that point, if it's, I mean, I don't even know if it's this much shorter, that deer net's over 200 inches.
Which I r I don't know if the
Puts it
stat's real or not, but there's only if someone knows the actual stat, I would love if they
12.
messaged in and told us. Is that how little it is? 12 over 200-inch net bucks?
I think so. I think it's
Yeah,
something like that, 11 or 12.
yeah,
There's
because
two
I
in the
think
state of Ohio right now, and they're tied at 201 and an eighth, I think.
uh-huh.
Mine would have netted, if that was the case, it would have been 207 eighths. So 2/8 from the state
Wow.
record. Yeah. It was
And
kind of
that
heartbreaking when they were like, "Oh yeah, you know, this is how we're scoring." I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this thing has a chance to beat state record or be, close." And they're like,
yeah.
"Well, but this point over here is like an eighth of an inch too long. So now we have to count it." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. I
An
can't believe
eighth
that."
of an inch, man.
It is.
Jeez. Which, I mean, I feel like we're kinda in the mud because you did shoot one of the all-time craziest giant
Yeah.
typicals to ever
And that's
walk
what
the face of the earth.
everybody tells me. They're like, "Dude, they're like, if you would have known that deer wasn't going to score 200 inches, would you not killed it?" I'm
Right,
like,
right.
heck no, dude. If that deer,
Right.
I thought the deer was only going to be, we guessed him at 191. We're like, that deer's going to be maybe like 191. And then we added it up and we're like, we were off by over
Oh,
20 inches.
when they get that big, it's really hard. I think it's really hard. The bigger they get, the harder it is to guess.
Yeah, I never guessed. I think it's his G2 or G3 on the right side. It's over 14 inches.
Yeah, no one would guess tines get that big.
No. And
That's huge. It's ginormous.
then the two other ones, one's like 13 and 6/8, the other one's like 13 and 5/8. I mean, they're long.
Mhm,
29. The one beam's like 29 and 7/8.
mhm.
So, I mean, I didn't guess he would have 30-inch main beams. I'm like 26, both sides. I was off. So,